So,
The deep
gotta talk
dive.
about this. So,
You want me to pull up?
so
You want me to pull
recently
up the
we've come
comment?
across. Recently, yeah, pull up the comments. So
All
recently,
right.
we've come across a couple of comments on a couple of videos recently
All
that
right.
I feel like we just needed to address a little bit because I feel like there was a bit of misunderstanding with the message that was sent out from us. Now, nothing against the individual that commented because we're not going to call him out. We're not going to say nothing he said was wrong, nothing like that. I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding when it came down to the NIL contract situation. When we said before that in this in this NIL world that we got, where you're getting this money and you're being offered these contracts, what needs to happen is if you're going to sign a contract, you need to be able to uphold and honor the contract that you've been given. And I get his argument of NFL contracts are bad, and even the coaches aren't honoring their contracts, which I agree. It was messed up that you have coaches that have these guys come in that don't even stay there after a year. But you got to
Mhm.
remember, it's a two-sided coin to this. It's a very two-sided coin because one, yeah, you have coaches that are dipping out on players as soon as they get there, and that's just messed up on their end. However, you also have players that are dipping out on coaches because they don't like the coach, or they just don't like where they at, or they don't like the school. I get that. But if you're signing a multi-million-dollar contract to be there for 4 years, even talking about how the NBA and the players are now controlling their contracts and controlling where they go, neither one of us are against college players making their money. I want you
Absolutely
to make
not.
your money. I want you to, if
Absolutely
you
not.
want to go, if it's a better deal somewhere else, cool. The problem is, though, when you get to the professional level, and once again, I agree with Buddy that the NFL contracts are terrible. However, when you got players that have pull and you know that there's people are looking for you, we even take Kirk Cousins as a perfect example. Kirk Cousins gets lucrative contracts really wherever he goes. But
I don't
especially
know
with the
why,
recent situation,
personally.
especially with the recent situation in Atlanta, and other players have done it before. Brock Purdy just signed one. You have players now that have no trade clauses in their contracts. That means if a team wants to trade them away, they have to full on agree that that's where they want to go. If they
Facts.
don't want to go there, guess what? The team stuck with them or they just release them flat out. And on each other's ends, there's a loss that's going to happen for both people. If you're released as a player, you lost out on whatever's left money in that contract.
You get your
If you get
guaranteed, but whatever other incentives
if
you
you're
have,
guaranteed, all that other
you
incentives are
lose it.
going. Facts. Kirk Cousins got Jerry Maguire doing his deals. Man,
Facts, man.
whoever his agent is needs to go in the NFL Hall of Fame. I will
Him,
say it now and I'll say it
listen,
forever.
his agent, his agent, and Shohei Otani's agent, because I'm still tripping over the fact that Shohei got a $700 million deal over 10 years, and he got 680 million of that deferred
Guaranteed.
to be tax free afterwards.
Listen, listen, whatever it is, it's crazy. But at the end of the day, same, and we'll take the Nico Imaliaba thing. I get that you were trying to negotiate for higher money. However, you didn't put up the numbers to get the higher money, so you left. Problem is when you sign like once again when you sign a contract, there needs to. I don't have a problem with you leaving, but my thing is if you sign a legal document and you leave, yeah, you like one, you've lost that money from the NIL you just had because you're no longer there. Or that's what my thing is. The punishment should be for if you have an NIL with a school, once you leave the school, you don't have that NIL no more. It's gone. And you
I'll
have to
say,
resign. And if you're gonna sign with that same place, you have to re-sign a new contract at the new school. The
yeah,
other problem is if you're gonna hop from school to school every 6 months, then you need to be penalized in some kind of figure because that's what's going to happen to you when you go to the professionals. Even with the NBA, people are talking about yeah, the NBA you can run your own contracts and players are able to control where they go. However, people honestly don't like how that's set up because you got players hopping on these teams together, and now these balances are all thrown off. And there's no real competition in some of these conferences or some of these divisions because you have six superstars on one team together because that's where they all wanted to be. And then the six superstar team ends up being the worst one out there.
right.
Nobody wants to
And, I,
see that. We want to see competition. This past playoffs has been the most competitive we've seen in years.
and I'll say, and I'll say this again, like you, I agree with Buddy that I'm not against any college athlete making their money. I'm not. I've been a college athlete. I know it. And I'm all for college athletes making their money. What I'm not for is y'all trying to scam your money. I'm not for y'all trying to just get over and not honor the contracts, because at the end of the day, your word is the last thing you have. Honor your word, honor your contract. And if there is something better for you, then by all means, yes, make sure you get your better option, but also honor what you did beforehand, because at the end of the day, nobody can say you ain't a man of your word. If I sign an NIL deal saying I'm going to go play at least 1 year at the University of Texas, I'm going to go play 1 year at the University of Texas. That's what I'm going to do. And then after Texas, if I want to go somewhere else, cool. If I sign a 2-year deal to go play at Oklahoma, I'm going to go play 2 years at Oklahoma. Then I can dip, because that's what I gave to them. And yes, I understand when bro said, but coaches get to leave and do everything else. Coaches should be held accountable for this too.
Absolutely.
And if you're going to leave early in a contract, if you're going to leave early, you have to buy yourself out. They do it all the time. You want to talk about the NBA? That's what Russell Westbrook has done multiple times. Every time he's been traded to Utah, he personally spent his own money to buy himself out of Utah, so he did not have to play for them. And that way he could go play somewhere else. If you are a college athlete and you do not want to be at this school anymore, but you have an NIL deal.
Facts. Trying to spam NIL deals and dropping out balling. balling
I'm
like we trap
saying.
NIL now. Facts. And tell you the truth, here's another perfect example about with the coaching situation. Sometimes you can't blame the coach. Take Marshall. Marshall is a perfect example of how that works. Marshall had a coach that wanted to stay and was waiting on an extension. The players wanted him there, but the school itself, the organization itself, didn't rehire him. So he had to leave. And players left. Some players left and followed him where he went, which I would have expected them to do because that's the coach that they wanted.
I would expect half of them. I would expect half everybody who had the means and the funds to do it. I would have expected to do it, unless they were just really that. Unless they were just really that tied to Marshall, like they really wanted to go to Marshall. That was either their number one, or that's just financially the best thing for them, or family wise, that's closest to their family.
Some people decide, you know what? And some people like, despite whatever coach we got, I'm gonna tough this out. Cool, right. Nothing against it.
Respect it.
And then when you have when you have some coaches, I can't remember what his name was, because all this same thing with coaches hopping and skipping and jumping from team to team happened the same time that this transfer portal mess started. I can't remember what his name was, but the problem was you had coaches that had new classes coming in, but the same classes they had before they got there, they had maybe a quarter of them at best.
Yeah.
So if you're having to literally work with a brand new group of people every single season because you have no continuity, because everybody's hopping and skipping and jumping and going from squad to squad every year.
What's stopping you as a coach from jumping from squad to squad?
Exactly. What's stopping you from jumping from place to place if it's a better situation for you? It goes from the top down. Sometimes you have to blame the organization, and we can definitely blame the NCAA for allowing this to be as loosey goosey as it is.
Oh, we're not sitting there saying the NCAA is a perfect system and that we should go back to where kids can't make their money. Absolutely not. The NCAA exploits a lot.
And then on top of that, even the NCAA even acknowledges that this isn't a perfect system and they haven't gotten it figured out. Which, cool. Thank you for picking up admitting your fault. However, after all these years of taking advantage of these athletes and having them bend over backwards, sacrificing themselves every day for no financial compensation up until recently, no, I have nothing wrong. I have nothing against you wanting to go somewhere else that's going to give you a better deal, because sure, if you play for 1.5, let's say at North Carolina State, play a year, play 2 years, then you find out that Wisconsin is going to pay you 4, by all means, go where the better deal is, especially if you feel like this is going to be a better team, better looks, better money, better coaching. Take the advantage of it. I have nothing against that. But the problem comes in when you have guys, like I said, like Nico and Maliava, who go from a good situation in Tennessee, then you are advised wrong by holding out of practices, by not showing up to meetings, by your one of your parents trying to do a backdoor deal in your name and being bad about it and getting caught. And now you lost 90% of your contract going to UCLA instead.
And just
You went from making $8 million in 4 years to $200,000 a year
here, and here's where it's at, bro.
after
Because
tax. You went to the place with the highest tax rate.
and here's
On top of that,
and here's what it's like, bro. Because and I feel like you're gonna agree with me 100% when I say this. Before the NIL things and everything got approved, NCAA was running the show, just basically doing all the backdoor deals, keeping all the money, right? Now that everything's been approved, we are on the full 180 spectrum of the players trying to exploit the NCAA. Like we are on that side of the spectrum where every player that gets an NIL deal more than likely, or most players, are trying to exploit the NCAA for all it's worth for all the years that they've done it. I mean, I get how we've gotten there because a lot of players have been exploited, but that's not the right way either. And we got to try and find that middle ground because, yes, at the end of the day, the NCAA is $1 billion industry, bro. We know it's always going to generate money, regardless. It's always going to, until a true viable option is developed and created in this world to eradicate the NCAA, that is always going to be the most for sure pipeline to get to the professional level. So, how do we go from the NCAA fully exploiting it? Yep. Sticks to the man. How do we go from the NCAA fully exploiting these kids to the kids trying to fully exploit the whole system and it just doesn't look bad at all and we don't even get a good product on the field? To that middle ground where the NCAA is cool with the money they're making, but the kids are getting paid. The kids are getting paid exactly what they're worth and what they deserve because we all know not every kid is going to the pros. 90% of these players, 95% of them are not going to make it to the pros. Men, women, kids, whoever. So, yes, while they're in college making money for these schools, let's make sure they get funded appropriately. But also, let's not sit here and try to scam them because guess what? You wouldn't do that at your job. You know you'd get fired. You wouldn't do like military contracts. Y'all wouldn't do that. You know you're getting kicked out. Any legal binding contract, y'all try to start scheming off of the top because you're mad that the system's been exploiting you. You know when you get caught, that's on you. And because it's a legal binding contract, you're held to that. So that's really what it comes down to and what we've been trying to preach. We're not against y'all making y'all money. But what we don't want to see happen to y'all is y'all end up in situations like Nico, where now legally they can take all of that and you don't get none of the money.